Hi everyone, it's Alan Liang here. I'm an instructor in the fundamentals of human movement, and here's another episode that is movement rehab themed. So, if you've listened to the previous episodes, as you know, I have this spectrum of like ability and health as it relates to movement. On the left side, we've got movement rehab for when you get hurt or your health is depleted, and you can use movement and the fundamentals and the foundations of movement to actually help to accelerate your healing and bring your health and fitness foundations back. And then from there, if you choose to, you can then enhance your performance in whatever chosen activity that you want so that you can get even more enjoyment out of it and more satisfaction from it. And then even if you don't have a specific thing that you want to increase your performance for, maybe you want to then refine the way that you move. You want to make sure that you have robust longevity to look forward to as you age. So rehab, enhance, refine. These are sort of the three major aspects of movement health that I offer as I instruct people through the foundations of human movement. So my studio's here in Botany, Sydney, but I also offer a movement rehab program called TAYP, or Train Away Your Pain, online. It's on school.com, so skool.com/TAYP. Soon to come, I'll have instructionals, more instructionals there as it relates to getting you out of pain and helping you feel yourself again. And I'll soon have another page. Well, that's the plan at the moment. It might change, but another school page that's more about the enhancement and refinement of the foundations that you've built that are a little bit more challenging and are more about, like I said, just building upon the foundation as opposed to rebuilding the foundation. So today's episode is about the three most neglected movements that people tend to, people just don't have. People aren't aware of them. That's why it's neglected. And it's often not really, these three movements aren't really common in traditional therapy spaces and training spaces like standard gyms. It's starting to come in. It's starting to become more and more prevalent. There's much more of these types of training modalities available now in little niches. Whereas when I first started this, it was pretty like these three things were pretty like in the mainstream fitness world. They were pretty like rare to find. So about 10 years on, things have started to improve quite a bit. However, there's still quite a number of, it's pretty hit and miss even when it does appear. And still quite a lot of places are still stuck in an older model of training. So these three most neglected movements or movement qualities or attributes, they are rhythm, rotation, and propulsion. So rhythm. Now, let's talk a little bit about that. So rhythm is an interesting little quality of your body that in the modern Western world is not really valued and looked highly upon in general, but in particular amongst men, rhythm tends to take a really, really big backseat. And as a result, I find that a lot of men tend to, like a lot of my lower back issues tend to be my male clients, not all of them, but a large amount of them. And most of the men that I see tend to have quite a lot of back pain because their hips don't move enough, and that's a lot of that is because culturally speaking, we don't have a value of and a context for or contexts for in a social setting for dance. In fact, it's kind of for men, it's looked upon a little bit as more effeminate, and men tend to shy away from that because they don't want other men thinking the wrong thing about them, so to speak. So, rhythm is an interesting word. It's very loaded, but when I say rhythm, I don't actually mean rhythm of dancing. I don't actually mean dancing, because I think that's what people tend to think when they hear that word. And I think it does that word a disservice. And I certainly think it does your movement health and function and just general well-being and confidence a disservice as well. Rhythm is really about timing, and it's really about order, like understanding order. And it's really about proportionality. Okay. So, like when I say rhythm, or when I say order and proportionality, like what I mean by that is like, there's a way that if you were to move, if you were to punch, let's say, a punch is basically one of your arms is close to your trunk, close to your center, and then you release, it's spring loaded, and then you unload that and extend the arm outwards to create an impact. That actually requires a fair bit of understanding of rhythm, because there's a way that you do it that if all the elements are aligned and all your joints are moving proportionally to one another, you have a much greater chance. And sometimes if you practice enough, you almost can't even do it wrong. Every punch you land is very efficient, very powerful. And so that has to do with your understanding of rhythm, rhythm between different areas of your body. That has everything to do with how different joints are opening in relation to other joints, how your spine or your trunk is rotating in relation to your shoulder movement or your elbow movement. So this is what rhythm is. I mean, they even use this in some clinical circles, and they talk about raising the arm overhead. I think it's called scapulohumeral rhythm or something like that. It's basically the rhythm of your upper arm, your humerus, with your scapula. So if that rhythm is off, it tends to create all sorts of shoulder dysfunctions and injuries. And the thing is, you can actually extrapolate that across all aspects of the body, all body parts. So if they're not talking to each other and they're not working proportionally to one another, they're out of order. And when something's out of order, if a vending machine's out of order, it's broken, it's not working properly. So if you don't have rhythm, essentially, and I don't mean dance, your body is out of order. The body is not working as it should, and it might not be broken, because it isn't broken, but it's not going to work as intended, and you actually have a higher chance of breaking something because you are putting undue pressure in the areas that aren't designed to take that pressure, and you will create wear and tear, and you will create problems in the future, and you may actually even cause injury to yourself. Now, the second most neglected quality of movement is rotation. Now, rotation is so big, and it's so missing in just the world in general. When you watch people moving around, and we don't often get taught the importance of rotation. So I often observe a lack of rotation in a lot of movements that would require it. In gyms, in training spaces, and in a lot of exercises, like I said, it's becoming better now, but there's a lot of rotation that could be incorporated into different exercises that aren't. Now, why is rotation so important? Well, I always tell people that more than 80% of your physical power comes from rotation. And I always point people to imagining in the Olympics, this is like the pinnacle of human athleticism, human physical potential. Every single, let's just look at track and field. Every single event requires rotation for them to maximize a javelin throw, a shot put, a hammer throw, discus, sprinting. They all require rotation. Golf, hockey, baseball, tennis, boxing, kickboxing, judo. There's rotation in everything we do. And if you look at our body structure, our trunk is it's like a literal trunk, like a trunk of a tree. It's circular. You look at it's cylindrical. You look at our limbs, they're all cylindrical. They're actually designed for what I call ringing. You should be ringing them in motion. That ring is like energy storage within that tissue. So it's muscle that's helping it to ring, but it's also your fascia, ligament, tendons getting wound and bound and stretched and like sort of tightened such that it's storing energy to be released. If you don't rotate, you won't ever know what that can do, and you won't actually have experienced physically your tissues doing that, your body doing that, let alone the effect of effective rotation in creating motion. So what would happen? What happens to a body when it stops rotating and stops rotating well for a long enough time? Well, if what I'm saying is true, if more than 80% of your physical power comes from rotation, and look, I'm just making that number up, but you can imagine if you didn't allow a javelin thrower to rotate his body, normally they can throw about 100 meters. They're not going to throw even 10. Okay, so there's a lot of power in rotation. So if your body's not rotating, if 80% of your power comes from rotation, therefore, if you have the power to put out, so output through rotation, you also have the power to input and absorb impacts through rotation as well. So it's important to understand that every action you do has a consequence. Every motion you make, you're interacting with the environment, your body weighs something, there's going to be impacts in your body. The question is, are those impacts being absorbed properly? Are they being absorbed in a way that is being distributed across as much of a surface area or like volume of your body as possible? Or is it being improperly dealt with, and then as a result, there's a concentrated force on a very small area, which eventually either breaks straight away or over time causes wear and tear, and then it breaks after reaching its limit and it can't hold on any longer. When you don't rotate, you're depriving your body of the ability to evenly distribute the impact of not just general, not just like motion in the training room or recreational physical activities, strenuous exercise, but also in just everyday movements. Getting in and out of the car, walking, going up and down stairs, getting up and down off the floor to play with your kids or pick things up off the floor, sitting up and down off a seat or a toilet seat, reaching overhead, moving the groceries, lifting heavy furniture. All of those things, you will eventually build up enough impact that there's a saying, a death by 1,000 cuts. They will be the 1,000 cuts that causes the quote unquote death or the injury of a part of your body that's going to potentially cause you to be in chronic pain if you don't deal with it properly. That, remember, as I said in a couple of episodes ago, first order pain leads to first order compensation. That compensation causes imbalances that leads to a second order pain and a second order compensation, and so on and so forth. So a lot of this can be mitigated or prevented entirely if you rotate. And so that's why you need to learn proper movement. That's why you need to learn how to rotate, and it's important and advisable, especially if you don't have time for trial and error, to get instruction from someone like me who is an expert in rotation, because by virtue of doing the sports that I've done and the discipline that I love, which is martial arts, I have to rotate. So I'm always exploring and understanding rotation. All of what I'm teaching is research informed. So there's many people that I follow that are much more specialized experts than me that put out information and papers. I read them and I let that inform my practice. A lot of what I teach is research informed and practice driven, and I think that's really, really important, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be an expert in your body. You just want to know how to move your body properly so it doesn't get in trouble. You want to learn how to drive your vehicle. That doesn't mean you need to understand how to put the car together. So that's the second one. First one, rhythm. Second one, rotation. Third one is propulsion. So that was going to be what I was going to get to with one of my previous points in rotation, is that if you can store enough kinetic energy in this coiling, ringing, spiraling structures in your body, and 80% of more than 80% of your power is due to rotation, what becomes available to you is propulsive force. You might think of it as explosivity, right? Explosiveness, plyometrics, these are sort of like terms that you might hear. Plyometrics is a bit more of like a sports sciencey clinical term, maybe clinical. But what I like to call it is propulsion, because that's what it is. It's propulsive. And I like that word because the difference between like strength moves and power moves is that power is strength plus speed. And more specifically to speed is like acceleration and deceleration. Prime example, easy example of power and explosiveness and propulsion is a jump. If you were to just jump on the spot and you looked at it in slow motion, I'm like lowering myself to like wind myself up. Okay, I'm storing energy in the flexion of my joints. And if I know how to use my body properly, there are rotations in there. And then I'm going to throw my hands, push the ground away, and like have the arms help me to unweight the body and help me to leave the ground. In that leaving of the ground phase of the motion, there's actually an acceleration. There's a speed to it. You're not doing a static speed to get off the floor. You'll never get off the floor that way. That's more of a squat. And this is what I mean by a lot of normal training modalities. They don't really emphasize power. They don't emphasize propulsion, which is, I think, a really massive disservice to your body. There's propulsion, so you're propelling yourself off the ground, and then as you, what goes up must come down due to gravity, and then as you land on the ground, there's going to be a rapid deceleration. Okay, a rapid deceleration, which is then going to, there's going to be a spike of your body soaking up the weight of your own body hitting the ground, and the speed that it accumulated as a result of the body falling. So these propulsion is like power. Power is strength plus speed. The speed is accelerative and decelerative. It's really important to practice how to accelerate and decelerate in your training, because you are engaging with propulsion, which is one of the primary functions of your body, of your kinetic tissue. Think of all the survival movements that our ancestors ever had to do. Yes, sure, they lifted weights and they pushed things and they pulled things and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the major survival movements, like running away from a predator or running towards prey so that you can eat and live another day, to fight off an enemy or an assailant, they require explosive force. They require propulsion. You're propelling fists. When you're running, you're propelling your whole body weight from one point to another. And then also throwing. Throwing is propulsion. Throwing is not a push. Okay, it's not a static and steady speed movement. It's actually a wind up, and it's like a whir ramping up, and then a spike of motion that basically transfers your force, the kinetic force, from your body into an external object, could be a rock or a spear, and launches it. So this is all propulsion. This is propulsive motion or projectile motion. That's why a lot of what I teach is based upon a lot of martial concepts, because in martial arts, it's all about the study of propulsion. Instead of propelling an external projectile, your limbs are the projectile. You're projecting your fist, your hand, your elbow, your shoulder, your head, your knees, your feet, your heels, your shins. You're learning how to to make yourself a projectile for the purposes of imparting enough impact on a would-be assailant such that they stop attacking you and you can survive. So self-defense, a lot of these functional training should be based in survival-based movements, because that's what our bodies were exposed to, and that's what our anatomy was born from and sort of evolved from and evolved to address so that we can survive. So, three most neglected movements: rhythm, rotation, and propulsion. Really, really important. Check in. How much rhythmical training are you doing? How rhythmical are you? How much rotation do you have in your movement and your training diet and routine? And how often and how well do you believe that you're propelling yourself, and how much do you actually have propulsion as an intent when you're training, or you're just training to get a pump? Are you just training to get your heart rate up? Are you just training so that you can look good? They're all great, don't get me wrong, but you're leaving a lot on the table if you're not training rhythm, rotation, and propulsion, and inviting those adaptations into your body. This is what I do in my my program, my movement instruction, and this is a big part of the movement fundamentals. I think these are so powerful that if you neglect them at your own peril, at your own risk, and if you choose to adopt them and sort of and bring them back out of your body, that's what your body was naturally born and designed to do, you'll achieve a confidence, a pain-freeness, and just a freedom to just do whatever you want with your body, that life becomes just really, really nice, okay? And at the very least, it just gets that out of the way so you can do all the other stuff that you've got to do that's important in your life without having to be drained by pain, suffering, and constantly in fear and second-guessing every move in case you're going to hurt yourself. All right, so that's it for another episode. Again, my movement rehab program you can find at trainawayyourpain.com or at trainawayyourpain. on Instagram. The overall framework you can find at acquiremovement.com or Acquire Movement on Instagram. And if you are like me and you are martially inclined and you want to enhance your performance through rotational mechanics, explosive strength, and integration of the body, then move_martial is where you'll see a lot of that kind of content. But in particular, I'll be starting a sparring group, learning a martial movement through friendly and safe sparring interactions, like stand-up wrestling, clinching, and I want to put a heavy focus on learning the gentlest techniques of the gentle art of judo, which is foot sweeps. If you're not a martial artist and you've never done judo, this probably makes no sense to you. But if it does, and you're interested in becoming a freak at foot sweeps like I am, then go to move_martial. But otherwise, I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you in the next one.